At the family-owned company, my brother publicly shamed me in a meeting saying, "She thinks she's above everyone because she has a degree, but this business runs on loyalty, not books." Then he looked around and said, "Let's make her earn her keep. Put her on inventory duty for the next month." I complied without a word, uncovered thousands in mismanaged funds, and handed the report to the external auditors. Now the whole company's under review, and he just asked, "Why did you do this to me?" I work at my family's company in Evansville, Indiana. My grandpa started it right after the Korean War. A small delivery business with one truck. Over the years, my dad turned it into a full-on regional distributor. We ship cleaning supplies, office equipment, basic warehouse stuff, nothing exciting, but it kept food on our table and paid for my degree. Yeah, I said it, my degree. And that's where this story really begins. Growing up, my older brother Dean was always the loud one. The one with the big ideas and the bigger mouth. I was the quieter one. The kid who followed the rules, studied hard, and got good grades. Our dad always treated Dean like the future of the business. And when I left for college, it was like they locked arms and said, "We got this." I figured once I graduated, I'd come back and help out. Maybe modernize a few things. Bring in some new ideas. That's not how Dean saw it. I came back to Evansville with a degree in business analytics and 2 years of experience under my belt. I didn't expect a parade, but I thought my brother would at least pretend to be glad I was back. He barely looked up from his phone when I walked in on my first day. At first, I let the small things slide. He'd call me Ivy League, even though I went to Purdue. He'd talk over me in meetings, cut off my reports, laugh at my suggestions. One time I recommended switching software for the inventory system and he just said, "Here comes the lecture again." I still thought maybe I just needed to prove myself. Maybe if I worked harder they'd listen. Then came that meeting. It was a Thursday morning. The big boardroom was full. Around 15 people, warehouse leads, finance, logistics, even 2 uncles and a cousin. I had a short presentation ready on supply chain delays and how we could cut costs. I worked on it for a week. I'd barely said 3 sentences when Dean interrupted me. Loud. Sharp. His voice just cut through the room. "You know what I think? She thinks she's above everyone because she's got a degree. But this business runs on loyalty, not books." I felt the air leave my lungs. People laughed. Not all of them, but enough. He smirked and looked around like he was waiting for applause. "Let's make her earn her keep. Starting Monday, she's on inventory. All month." Nobody said a word. And I didn't say anything either. I just closed my laptop, stood up, and left the room. What Dean didn't realize was that giving me inventory duty meant giving me full access to the back-end systems. I don't mean the daily input stuff. I mean everything: supplier contracts, payment logs, invoice histories, inventory receipts, warehouse input-output, and purchase orders. For a guy who claimed the business ran on loyalty, he was real bad at hiding things. It started with tiny discrepancies. One supplier's monthly payment was $12,800. But the receipt showed a delivery worth only $9,000. That was weird, but maybe a miscommunication. Then I found a payment to a vendor we hadn't used in over a year. Then another. Then a check for $18,500 issued to a consulting firm in Phoenix, and no records of any work done. The more I looked, the worse it got. I pulled every invoice from the last 2 years and matched them against our bank records. I made a spreadsheet. Every late payment, every odd transfer, every vendor that didn't match. Within a week, I had over $230,000 in questionable transactions. I stayed late every night, documenting it all. I screenshotted every email, downloaded every PDF, saved every transaction ID. And I didn't say a word. I kept showing up to work like nothing had happened. Dean still made his jokes. Still smirked when I walked by. Still acted like he ran the world. Then I called someone I interned with in Chicago, a forensic accountant who now worked for a big auditing firm. I asked him off the record what I could do. He said if the company wasn't public, I wasn't a whistleblower, I was a stakeholder. And if what I was saying was true, it was fraud. Possibly criminal. 2 Mondays later, a small group from that firm walked through our front doors with clipboards and briefcases. They said they were doing a routine review of our accounts. Dean looked confused. then annoyed, then pale. Because they didn't ask for payroll or HR files. They asked for his financial approvals, the check runs he signed, the vendors he added. The next morning, the firm froze multiple accounts. Our bank called. Our main supplier threatened to suspend shipments. And the auditors? They pulled a list of companies registered to a woman named Marcy Deeks, Dean's ex-girlfriend. Her name was on 6 checks. That's when everything blew up. Dean came into my office around 4:30 that afternoon. He slammed the door so hard the frame shook. He looked like hell, red eyes, shaking hands. He stared at me for a second and said, "Why would you do this to me?" I didn't even blink. "You made me dig through inventory, Dean. I just did what you asked." He looked like he was going to cry. "This was ours. You're my sister. Then maybe you should have treated me like it." He didn't say another word. Just walked out. The next few days were chaos. Cousin Mike resigned. Turns out he'd been approving some of the payouts without asking questions. 3 managers left. One of the warehouse guys pulled me aside and thanked me. Said he always knew something was off. My uncles, both shareholders, called an emergency meeting and handed over operational control to me. Just like that. They said, "You're the only one who gave a damn enough to look." But I'm not proud of any of this. I didn't want to burn everything down. I wanted to help. I wanted to be part of what my family built. But when Dean humiliated me like that, when he stood in front of everyone and made me feel small, he lit the match himself. All I did was show people the fire. The audit wasn't the end. It was just the start of a much bigger mess. A week after I was put in charge of operations, I got a letter from a lawyer. Certified mail. Thick envelope. It was from Dean's attorney, accusing me of sabotage, defamation, and malicious interference in business practices. He was threatening to sue me. His own sister. I sat at my desk staring at the letter. I wasn't surprised. Dean never took responsibility for anything in his life. But I couldn't believe how far he was willing to take it. The problem for him was, the auditors had already sent a preliminary report to the IRS and State Tax Board. They found irregular payments, unreported income, and false vendor records. I didn't have to do anything anymore. The machine was already moving. Still, the letter shook me. Not because I thought he'd win, but because I realized something. Dean would rather destroy everything than admit he was wrong. Around this time, our staff started splitting. Half were grateful I was taking control and cleaning things up. The others? Dean loyalists. People who'd worked under him for years. People he gave raises to, took out for drinks, treated like friends. They saw me as the one bringing in outsiders. Meaning the auditors. One of them, Jeff, ran warehouse scheduling. Big guy, beer belly, old school attitude. He cornered me in the loading dock one day and said, "We've been doing things a certain way around here for a long time. You might want to think twice before changing everything." I looked him dead in the eye. "That way is how we lost $250,000. He didn't reply. Just walked off. Later that week, I found out he'd misplaced 2 pallets of outgoing orders, almost $12,000 worth of supplies. And guess what? The delivery route was one of Dean's old personal clients. Coincidence? I suspended Jeff that same day. That night, I got a call from Dean. I didn't pick up, so he left a voicemail. His voice sounded cold. "No more fake charm. Just poison. You think you're winning, don't you? You're not. I built this place. You're just squatting in it. Enjoy it while it lasts." Then he hung up. I didn't sleep much after that. 2 days later, I got to work early and found the front window smashed in. Glass everywhere. A rock had been thrown through the reception area. We checked the cameras. Someone in a hoodie, no face, no plate on the truck. Cops came, took a report, said they'd look into it. But I knew. Everyone did. It was intimidation. The same day my car's back tire was slashed. Right in the lot. Right next to the building. Broad daylight. I didn't tell my parents. They were in Florida trying to enjoy retirement. I didn't want them to worry. But deep down I started realizing just how far Dean might go. And I started planning. The auditors gave me access to some sealed financials from the previous 2 years. Stuff Dean had tucked away under miscellaneous projects. That's when I found the biggest twist yet. Dean had opened a second business, a logistics consulting group, and was billing our own company for its services. He'd been stealing from inside the house. Over $90,000 in payments had gone to this shell company over 18 months, set up under an anonymous LLC in Kentucky. But the bank records, they were clear as day. Transfers into Dean's personal account. It wasn't sloppy. It was deliberate, calculated, and now I had everything in writing. At this point, I didn't just want him out. I wanted every lie exposed, every dime accounted for. So I made a decision. I set up a shareholder emergency vote, legal under our bylaws, and brought in the remaining stakeholders, including my uncles and 2 cousins with minor shares. And at that meeting, I presented the full report.
No sugarcoating.
$328,000 in fraudulent payments, false vendors, fake consulting, ghost shipments, tampered schedules. At the end, I looked everyone in the eye and said, I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for accountability. Nobody argued. The vote was unanimous. Dean was permanently removed from any business activity, and the company filed an internal fraud claim against him, legally separating all his rights and assets tied to our operations. I expected him to lash out. I didn't expect what came next. The IRS subpoenaed the company records and sent agents to his house. I heard through the grapevine that when they showed up, Dean lost it. Yelling about betrayal about me, about how I'd ruined his life. But I didn't ruin anything. He made his own bed. And the real fallout? It hadn't even started yet. I thought that after the vote and the subpoena, things would finally calm down. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I got a call from our insurance carrier. A claim had been filed, not by me, but by someone pretending to be an executive from our company, for fire damage at one of our storage units outside of town. Problem was, we didn't have a fire. I drove out there with one of the warehouse managers and saw it with my own eyes. The back half of the unit was scorched black. Someone had set it on fire, just enough to damage some of the paper records we'd moved into off-site storage during the audit process. The arson report said it was likely intentional. And here's the kicker. The insurance adjuster said the claim was filed using my name, with a fake email account and a burner phone number. They were trying to make it look like I'd committed insurance fraud. I couldn't prove it was Dean. But who else would go this far? I handed everything over to the auditors and our lawyers. They started pulling every record, digging deeper, alerting law enforcement. And that's when another twist hit. One of the shell companies Dean had been funneling money into? It was also tied to our cousin Mike, the same cousin who had resigned quietly weeks earlier. Mike had been approving transactions on Dean's behalf while pretending he was unaware. He'd even signed off on vendor contracts that didn't exist. For months. So now it wasn't just Dean in trouble. Mike was too. Our family started splitting apart fast. Aunt Rena, Mike's mom, called me crying one night, saying I was tearing the family apart, and that business is business but blood is blood. I told her calmly that they tore the family apart the moment they started lying and stealing. That was the last time I heard from her. Then my own mother called, asking if I could just let things settle. She didn't say it directly, but I knew she wanted me to stop pushing, to let the company move on without dragging everything through the courts. I was stunned. So if I had just smiled through it and stayed quiet, everything would be fine? She hesitated. I just don't want to lose my children over money. It's not about money, Mom. It's about what's right. We haven't spoken much since. Meanwhile, the company was struggling to stay afloat. Vendors were nervous. Clients were calling. Rumors were spreading that the business was collapsing. I had to meet with each major partner, one by one, and show them the new internal controls we were putting in place. The only thing that saved us was the truth. I gave them full transparency. I even let a few of them review the audit report themselves. And slowly, things started to stabilize. But then, the most unexpected twist of all. One of the external accountants found an old payroll entry from 6 years ago. A quiet $10,000 bonus issued to an employee named Thomas R. Lee. The name didn't ring any bells, so we dug into it. Turns out Thomas R. Lee doesn't exist. The bank account the money was sent to? It had connections to my father's old business account. The same one he'd closed when he retired and handed us the keys. And that's when it hit me. This didn't start with Dean. It went back farther. Back to the years when my father was still running the place. The next day, I sat down with my dad. He was on the back porch, sipping his sweet tea like nothing was wrong. I told him what we found. He didn't look surprised. He just sighed and said, "I always thought I could fix it before anyone noticed." Fix what? Some of the guys weren't loyal. They skimmed. We had to move things around to keep up appearances. So I moved things too. So Dean learned it from you. I never told him to do any of that. He just figured out how the game worked. I just stood there, numb. Dad, you passed this business down to us. And it was broken. He didn't reply. I walked away. Now I didn't just feel betrayed by Dean. I felt betrayed by everyone. My dad. My cousin. My brother. Half the people I'd trusted growing up. I looked around at the company and realized I was the only one trying to do things the right way. And I knew this wasn't over. I hadn't just inherited a business. I'd inherited a legacy of lies. And I was going to be the one to burn it all clean. Once I realized my dad had been part of the cover-up years ago, something inside me cracked. I felt disgusted, angry, but more than anything, I felt alone. I spent the next few weeks working 12-hour days. I didn't talk to my family unless it was business. I barely slept. Every corner of the company felt like it had a secret under it. I went through every vendor, every account, every scrap of paper. I called old employees. Cross-checked every transaction for the past 7 years. The deeper I looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't just Dean being reckless. It was a pattern. A culture of doing things off the record, sweeping problems under the rug, covering losses with fake invoices, and blaming outsiders when it got too big. I realized something painful. I was part of it, too. Not directly. But by trusting the people above me. By staying quiet for so long. By being afraid to speak up just because I didn't want to rock the boat. That's when I decided to do the one thing no one in my family had the courage to do. I reported everything. Not just Dean. Not just Mike. I submitted a full disclosure to the IRS, Indiana State Revenue, and the DOJ's white-collar crime unit. I told them I was the acting COO of a company under internal investigation, and that I believed past leadership, including my own father, had knowingly engaged in fraudulent practices. I attached all the records, all the emails, the full timeline.
No edits. No spin.
I gave them everything. 2 months later, I was called to testify in front of a grand jury in Indianapolis. I wore a plain black suit and told the truth. The whole thing took half a day. They asked me if I was aware of the fraudulent payments. I said yes after the fact. They asked if I personally benefited. I said no. And I had documentation to prove it. They asked about my father. That's when I broke. I didn't cry, but my voice cracked. I said, "He's the man who taught me to love this company. And he's the man who failed it." I walked out of that courtroom feeling empty, but clean. The fallout hit fast. Dean was indicted on 7 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of tax evasion, and 1 count of conspiracy. They caught him trying to move money from his fake LLC to a private account in Tennessee. He tried to claim I forged everything. It didn't stick. He took a plea deal. 6 years in federal prison. Mike was charged as a co-conspirator. Lesser charges, but enough to put a record on him for life. He lost his license, his job, and filed for bankruptcy within 3 months. My dad? The DOJ didn't pursue charges due to his age and health, but the IRS slapped him with a $180,000 back tax bill, penalties included. He had to sell the family lake house just to cover it. He doesn't talk to me anymore. Neither does my mom. As for me, the company survived barely. I laid off 6 people, sold off 2 trucks, downsized the warehouse. I started hiring from outside the family, people with no ties, no loyalties, no secrets. I built a new leadership team from scratch. Every Friday we sit down and go line by line through the books. And now we're profitable, clean, small but honest. But let me be real. This came at a cost. I lost my family. I lost the belief that I could ever just walk in and belong. But I also got something else. I got the truth. I got respect from every honest employee who watched me take a business full of lies and turn it into something worth saving. And I got justice. Dean's in a jumpsuit. Mike's reputation is destroyed. My father's legacy is no longer untouchable. And I walk into that office every morning knowing no one, not one damn person, can look me in the eye and say I didn't earn my place. Dean once said, "This business runs on loyalty." He was right. But loyalty means nothing without honor. And that's what I gave this company, even if I had to burn the whole family down to do it.